John 21, verses 1 to 19, and I'm reading from the New International Version. Afterwards, Jesus appeared again to his disciples by the Sea of Galilee. It happened this way. Simon Peter, Thomas, also known as Didymus, Nathanael from Cana in Galilee, the sons of Zebedee, and two other disciples were together. "I'm going out to fish," Simon Peter told them. And they said, "We'll go with you." So they went out and got into the boat. But that night they caught nothing. Early in the morning, Jesus stood on the shore. But the disciples did not realize that it was Jesus. He called out to them, "Friends, haven't you any fish?" "No," they answered. He said, "Throw your net on the right side of the boat and you will find some." When they did, they were unable to haul the net in because of the large number of fish. Then the disciple whom Jesus loved said to Peter, "It is the Lord." As soon as Simon Peter heard him say, "It is the Lord," he wrapped his outer garment round him, for he had taken it off, and jumped into the water. The other disciples followed in the boat, towing the net full of fish, for they were not far from shore, about 100 meters. When they landed, they saw a fire of burning coals there with fish on it and some bread. Jesus said to them, "Bring some of the fish you have just caught." So Simon Peter climbed back into the boat and dragged the net ashore. It was full of large fish, 153. But even with so many, the net was not torn. Jesus said to them, "Come and have breakfast." None of the disciples dared ask him, "Who are you?" They knew it was the Lord. Jesus came, took the bread and gave it to them, and did the same with the fish. This was now the third time Jesus appeared to his disciples after he was raised from the dead. When they had finished eating, Jesus said to Simon Peter, "Simon, son of John, do you love me more than these?" "Yes, Lord," he said, "you know that I love you." Jesus said, "Feed my lambs." Again, Jesus said, "Simon, son of John, do you love me?" He answered, "Yes, Lord, you know that I love you." Jesus said, "Take care of my sheep." The third time he said to him, "Simon, son of John, do you love me?" Peter was hurt because Jesus asked him the third time, "Do you love me?" He said, "Lord, you know all things. You know that I love you." Jesus said, "Feed my sheep. Very truly I tell you, when you were younger, you dressed yourself and went where you wanted. But when you are old, you will stretch out your hands and someone else will dress you and lead you where you do not want to go." Jesus said this to indicate the kind of death by which Peter would glorify God. Then he said to him, "Follow me." Amen.
So there now follows a shared sermon. And I'm very grateful to Michael for coming today to share his experience of doing Food Share. This is a talk which he gave at Synod, and I was completely spellbound by the whole thing. His experience is somewhat different from ours, and so we're going to see whether there's anything that we can learn that we might want to put into place here. But before I hand over to him, I want to make a link between that and the Bible reading that we've just heard. We find ourselves, of course, at the end of the Gospel story, as it is told to us by the writer of the fourth Gospel. The risen Christ is there with his disciples and ends up in this conversation with Peter. Remember that Peter had denied Jesus 3 times, and remember how devastated Peter must have felt as he tried to come to terms with that. And so 3 times Jesus asks, "Do you love me?" And so he is given the chance to bring himself back into a relationship with Jesus. But notice that the affirmation of love comes with a call. Feed my lambs, tend my sheep, feed my sheep. And this is then followed by the commandment, follow me. So the link that I want to make is a link that goes all the way through the Bible. There's something about discipleship that goes with feeding those who need it. We already know about that at this church, but we're going to explore now whether we can do any more with our food share project that might help more people. And so Michael is going to come now and explain to us what happens at his church, and then there'll be time for questions, and then I'll do a little bit of summing up. Okay, thank you, Michael.
Morning. May I have my first slide, please? So, put this in context. Oak Ridge Methodist Church sits in a suburb of Basingstoke, surrounded by social housing, originally built for workers at Aldermaston. There are many low or no income families, and a mix of both Basingstoke born and bred, and others, incomers, including Muslim families from Eastern Europe, Syria and Iran. The church was opened in 1968, and many of the homes around are of a similar vintage, although there was a redevelopment project between 2000 and 2005, which saw about half of them demolished and replaced by newer properties. Before the pandemic, we used to run a messy church once a month, which my wife Alison led along with Yvonne Hunt, our lay outreach worker, and a number of volunteers, which helped us to get to know a number of the families. Some of them called me Mr. Vicar. Generations are short in Oak Ridge, with many mums becoming grandmas by the time they are 40, while still having under 5s themselves. There is a nursery and a preschool in the church hall. In September 2020, with Yvonne's encouragement, we started a food distribution hub on the grass outside the church on a Friday lunchtime. We started out with 3 or 4 tables, a gazebo and a bench. The bench was already there. The weather was kind to us, and people passing by would stop and take food and chat, mainly to Yvonne, while I helped with marshalling the food. This was basically taking food that had reached its best before date, collected from supermarkets the day before, under the Fair Share programme, and sorted at the URC church in the centre of Basingstoke. There was a lot of bread and bananas. You'll know about the bread. Next slide, please. As the weather worsened, we moved into the small hall attached to the church and kept COVID safe by encouraging people to keep spaced out. However, there was a seismic change in the summer of 2021 when it decided centrally, please, next slide, to use freezers so that food on its use-by date could be collected and frozen and then distributed the next day. Here are the freezers full, and every bit of food that is frozen has a label on it which says when the date it was frozen, so people know how long it's been there. I've now taken up the mantle of printing labels. We use more than 100 sheets, that's 25 labels per sheet, every week. And next slide, please. And this was then the next day. This was the beginning of April. And those freezers were all emptied within half an hour of opening. And you see we now have 2 fridge freezers and two separate freezers, just for the volume we keep. And they get filled every week on a Thursday evening. We get a variety of stuff in. 2 weeks ago, I collected 5 trolleys worth of flowers, which were then distributed out. And last Friday, I picked up 30 kilograms of onions, a bag of 20 and a bag of 10, and 3 3.5 kilogram packs of instant custard. So over the 18, next slide please. Over the 18 months we've been running, we've got to know the people using the food link as individuals, their families, how many children they have and how they're feeling. We give out lollies for children, and one lady asked for 7. We know their dietary requirements, and as far as possible, reserve fish for those who don't eat meat, and offer vegetarian and vegan options too. You can see there Yvonne in the red and Christina, church steward, greet people in the queue, and we're often asked questions such as, why do we do this? What's Pancake Tuesday for? They often have to resolve disputes in the queue. We open from 1 till 3, but people start arriving from 10 or 10:30. Yvonne says that when she talked about how God would like us to behave and other things to the people, a couple of weeks later, someone may talk with her, having reflected on what she said previously. It's good for the people to see the church doing, and more recently, there have been questions about how God can let there be war in Iran, in Ukraine. And you can also see the queue in the rain up at the top. This sort of shows the level of need in the area. Not everyone can come for 1 o'clock, and it's very busy for the first half hour, by which time most of the food is gone. So we also prepare family boxes. On the left you can see a stack of the boxes ready to be filled the next week. And then we supplement these with frozen items. For Easter and Christmas, we also include Christian crafts for the children. And when I checked on the Friday before I gave the talk, there were 23 on the list, and we added a further 4 that day. We're now up to 30, so we serve around 150 people each week. Last slide, please. Because we share the building with the nursery, we're restricted in the space we can use and can't access the toilets. However, the nursery was closed on Good Friday, but we were still open, and we used the worship area and nursery area to serve tea and coffee from about 11 o'clock and then distribute the food at 1. Our long-term plan is to migrate the hub into the worship area, but that needs work to safeguard the nursery, and we haven't found time to do that yet. Some wisdom and guidance and things that we've learnt. You need a solid team, not just the volunteers on the day, including the team for conversations, because you can't distribute the food and get to know the people well. You also need the backup to do the collection, the sorting, the distribution to the hubs. There are 7 hubs around Basingstoke operating out of different churches every day. The supermarkets know that they can rely on us to take away their waste food every night, and sometimes during the day too. And this has built our reputation with them. We now make over 80 collections a week. You have to be prepared to be firm and watch carefully. If not challenged, some will take more than their fair share. You have to be open to hearing people's stories, as they like to be heard, and be prepared for growth. We started with 4 tables and a gazebo, and the central organisation had a small Transit Connect van. They now have this and an ex-home delivery van donated free by Tesco, but still have to find the money for the diesel to fuel them both. Thank you. Are there any questions? Pretty much all the, sorry, the question was how many churches are involved in this? Pretty much all the churches around Basingstoke do some work with this. Depending on the area, one area of South Ham, there are 3 churches, so there's 1 out of that 3, but the churches are all spread around. So we serve all the way around. And in the centre of Basingstoke, at the URC, where this all started, they also have a shared food lunch, a sharing lunch, so people can come and get their lunch outside, and they pay what they feel they're able to. So that's where all the onions have gone, and the custard.
How many shops or places do you actually collect from?
How many shops do we collect from? We collect from pretty much every supermarket in Basingstoke, apart from Morrison's. So we collect from Asda, Tesco, Sainsbury's. We collect from Booker's Wholesale, Aldi, We collect from some of the smaller Metro Tesco's as well, Waitrose, and most of those are done in the evening. But I do collections from Sainsbury's at lunchtime on a Thursday, Aldi on a Friday, Booker's on a Thursday and a Friday during the day.
Can I just ask, is this distributed one day in a week, or is it every day?
It's distributed on the same day. Sorry, the question is this distributed all through the week? Yes. There is a rota, effectively, of churches, so it goes to the same church on the same day every week, but every day there is a church with food. So around the different parts of Basingstoke.
How many people you have full-time, so to speak?
I think there is no one full-time. It is all done by volunteers.
Right,
So there are probably getting up to 200 volunteers who are involved with us. Yes, doing different things.
For your church?
For the whole of the organisation. For the church, we have probably 6 people who volunteer every week.
And you're steady number, and you line up?
Yes, yeah.
How many is that, 6?
That would be 6 or 7.
Augmented occasionally?
I'm sorry?
And augmented occasionally?
And augmented occasionally, yes. If people go on holiday, we have to find other people to help. Some of you will know, some of you might know Maggie Chiverton, who's I've forgotten her mum's name. Beryl. No, you won't know. Yeah, but some people do go on holidays. Yvonne went to Spring Harvest, so I had to take over and do some bits for that.
Now, when you collected this stuff on the supermarket, are you using your vehicles, or you got a hiring?
We've got 2 vehicles. We've got 2 vehicles that we use. So there was we started out with the with the donation. They bought a small transit, the Mini Transit Connect van, which is a refrigerated van, and also there is a large full-size Tesco delivery van. So that's got ambient, chilled, and frozen sections in it as well. On Thursday last week, I helped to offload. You might not know, but there is a Sainsbury's depot in Basingstoke, and if food gets sent out and then is damaged and the supermarket reject it, it gets sent back to the depot, and we collected over 100 crates from the Sainsbury's depot of stuff that would have otherwise gone to landfill. There were probably 20 crates of soft drinks. Being in the centre of the town, the URC gets students walking past on their way back from school or college, and they give out the drinks as part of their outreach.
Where do you find the people? Do you get referrals for families that are really desperate?
We don't get referrals, we just let anyone. The initial idea was that this would stop the food going to waste. So we have unlike some of the food banks which take referrals, anyone can come. But it's got spread by word of mouth. I said we've got some of the Muslim families, they all talk to each other, and they all come, and it's a meeting place for them as well.
Can I just ask another question, sorry? How do you limit how much a person will take? Or do you do that, or
We try and take a view on how much we have and how many people there are. And so if there's a lot, we might say that people can take 4 items of meat or fish or things like that. The vegetables, we don't, some of them we say 1 per family, depending on how much we've got. And we try and take a view of how much we think is going to be, we'll get through everyone. So we try and, but that's what I was saying about having to be firm and saying, no, you've got enough now. We also say to people, well, if you want more, go and join the back of the queue and come back again at the end. Sorry, yes. Normally, we freeze it so that it's on the date that it should be used by, and then we will keep it for up to a week, I would think. Normally it's gone the next day. The laws change, but the idea is that we take it on its use-by date and freeze it on that date, so then it's okay to be distributed. We've got someone, Maggie, that I mentioned before, who has food hygiene. Well, I've got food hygiene training as well, but there's not a legal requirement now on it because there are some things that we don't freeze. Mainly salad leaves and things like that, which have a use-by date because they've been cut. And so for those, we say that people can take them for their pets, but not for human consumption.
Michael, I wonder if it's worth pointing out that Oak Ridge has got a very small congregation, so there's half a dozen people who are helping on a regular basis. It's actually quite a high percentage.
Well, in fact, there's only one or two from the congregation. There's Yvonne, our outreach worker, and there are people from other churches. It's not only supported by Oak Ridge churches. There are people from the community church, people from Christ Church Chinham. So it's not purely an Oak Ridge run thing. Oak Ridge is where the need is, and so that's where the people have come to do the distribution.
So how initially did you get people from other churches to come to your Oak Ridge hub?
Again, that was word of mouth within the organisation. So, and it's the umbrella organisation is something called One Church Basingstoke, which is like a Churches Together organisation.
Are you able to reconcile the needs of the supermarket? And our supermarket here are very clear. We must dispose of everything after 24 hours. Are they, presumably you have explained to the supermarkets that they're freezing things?
Yeah, they know that we're doing that, and we're also for us on a Friday we're very blessed because we're the only hub that operates on a Friday. There are some days of the week where there are maybe two hubs operating, so they don't get as much. But also for us now, the URC church in the centre of town opens up on a Saturday to distribute food as well. They also have a plastic greenhouse outside where they store bread for people that people know they can just come and take. So anything we have left over on the Friday, we could then take to the URC, and then if it's not been used by us that day, it gets used the next day. But as you can see from the earlier photographs, the freezers and fridges get emptied every day on the day, and very quickly. Sorry, yes. I don't know about the insurance, but I believe that's done under the umbrella organisation of the One Church.
Any time for one more question, if there is anything burning in anyone's mind? Becky?
Weirdest thing I've ever collected. Well, it's not the weirdest thing, but one thing we do get is inundated with turkeys at Christmas. There were freezers there are probably 8 freezers around the URC church in the central hub, and there were so many turkeys. There was a chest freezer which was sort of that wide and that deep, which was full of turkeys. However, the unfortunate thing was that they were put in fresh and all packed in. When they were frozen, we almost needed a crowbar to get them out. They'd all moulded together and moulded around each other. It took probably half an hour to start to get the lowest layer out because they were all intertwined. So, okay.
Okay, well, thank you for coming and for sharing. So as to say thank you to Michael. Thank you very much. I suggest that we think about that, have a few informal conversations and perhaps set up a meeting to see whether there's anywhere else that we can take this. So sort of conclusion now in Bristol, to bringing it back to more sermon speak, if I may, just for a minute. We started off with Jesus' command, feed my sheep. And feeding the needy is one of the most often repeated commandments in the Bible. If you read the book of Deuteronomy, on which a lot of Jesus' teaching was based, we're told that we have land and food which did not come from us, but everything we have comes from God, and that we're commanded to ensure the safety and well-being of all people. I'm going to finish now by quoting the words of a hymn verse. Heaven shall not wait for the poor to lose their patience, the scorned to smile, the despised to find a friend. Jesus is Lord. He has championed the unwanted. In him injustice confronts its timely end.